Have you ever been in a conversation where you asked a simple question and you got an answer that was so long, so complicated that by the end of it you completely forgot what you even asked? You feel like you're just drowning in a sea of words, right? You're trying to find one clear point, but you just keep getting pulled under by context and nuance. Well, that feeling, it has a name: conversational fog. And today we're going to give you a map and a compass to find your way through. The most striking truth about conversational fog is that the person who talks the most is often the one saying the least. Now, we generally assume that explanation is the antidote to confusion, right? But in these high-pressure dynamics, over-explanation is actually a tool. It's used to saturate your brain until you're just too tired to disagree. So why does hearing too much context often make you feel less certain about the truth than you were before? Well, this is the core paradox of conversational fog. It's that exact moment your own desire for understanding and nuance gets turned into the mechanism of your own mental exhaustion.
You ask for clarity, and what you get is a tidal wave of information. This isn't transparency, it's saturation. You can almost think of it like a denial of service attack, but for your brain. The goal isn't to help you understand, it's to completely overwhelm your capacity to think critically. The conversation just shifts from a collaborative search for truth to this one-sided lecture that's designed to flood your working memory, making it pretty much impossible to hold on to your original point.
Now, that confusing, frustrating feeling, it's not random, and it's definitely not a sign that you're just not getting it. It's actually a recognized pattern, and it has a clinical name. By moving from that personal feeling of confusion to a more clinical understanding, we can start to see the system at play. So let's get our terms right and really break down the mechanics. Okay, the technical term for this is linguistic obfuscation. It's a concept straight out of behavioral science. It marks the exact moment when the whole purpose of language just flips. You know, language is supposed to be a bridge, right? Connecting two minds with a shared understanding. But in this case, it's weaponized to become a maze. The goal is to take one simple, verifiable fact and wrap it in so many layers of complexity that you just give up trying to judge it. It validates your experience. You're not bad at listening. You're on the receiving end of a very specific linguistic tactic.
And this isn't just a theory. We see this pattern play out in very specific, high-pressure environments. Think about a spiritual guru explaining away some financial issue with hours of dense, circular philosophy. Or a corporate PR team facing a scandal, burying a direct question under a mountain of jargon and irrelevant data. It's also incredibly common in enmeshed relationships, where a simple question like, "Hey, did you do the thing you promised?" turns into a 45-minute lecture on the entire history of the relationship. In every single case, the objective is exactly the same: avoid accountability.
So why do we fall for it? Well, there are two powerful psychological hooks that turn our own best qualities against us. First, there's the intelligence hook. The speaker sounds so articulate, so confident in their complex web of words, that you start to doubt yourself. You start thinking, wow, this is over my head. The problem must be me. I'm just not smart enough to follow. It preys on our fear of looking foolish. Then there's the second hook, linguistic vertigo. After you've been bombarded with countless counterarguments and what-ifs, you start to feel dizzy, ungrounded. You begin to question objective reality itself, wondering if maybe there is no simple truth, just a fog of endless, equally valid interpretations.
So here's the crucial point. The goal isn't to win the argument with a better point. The goal is what we can call narrative proliferation. It's about creating a flood. Imagine you have one clear story, the truth. The whole point of linguistic obfuscation is to introduce 10, 20, 50 competing, complicated narratives. Your single, clear story gets completely drowned in the noise until it's impossible to find, let alone defend. It's a strategy of confusion, not conversion.
You can almost feel the shift that happens inside you. You walk into the conversation in a state of active inquiry. You're leaning in, you're a participant, you're asking questions, seeking facts. But as the fog rolls in, your posture changes. You shift into passive drowning. You're no longer trying to navigate the conversation, you're just trying to survive it. Your only goal becomes finding the exit, just waiting for the noise to finally stop so you can have a moment of quiet.
Let's talk about why this is so effective. And we can use this number as an example. This represents what's called executive function flooding. Your executive functions, that's your brain's CEO, in charge of reasoning and decision-making, they run on a finite energy source. Psychologists call this System 2 thinking. It's slow, deliberate, and it gets tired easily. So when you learn that asking a simple question is going to cost you a 45-minute monologue, the biological cost of seeking the truth just becomes too high. Your brain, in an act of self-preservation, learns to stop asking. The pain of the explanation becomes worse than the pain of not knowing. That's System 2 exhaustion in action.
Okay, so we know what it is, and we know why it works. But how is it actually deployed? Because this isn't just a random, rambling rant. No, there's a predictable, systematic, three-step pattern to it. So let's unveil this mechanism. It's a sequence that, once you see it, you really can't unsee.
And here it is, the three-step pattern. First, the divergent pivot. Second, the layering of nuance. And third, the exhaustion concession. Just seeing it laid out like this is pretty powerful. It transforms what feels like a chaotic, personal attack into an observable, almost mechanical tactic. So let's break down each step.
It all starts with step 1, the divergent pivot. You ask a direct, simple, closed-ended question. For example, did you meet the project deadline? Now, instead of a yes or a no, you get a foundational tangent. The speaker pivots. They might start talking about the philosophical nature of deadlines, or the systemic issues in the company, or some personal story about how pressure affects their creativity. The topic immediately pivots away from the specific point of accountability to some broad, abstract, and ultimately irrelevant subject. And your original question is just left hanging in the air, totally unanswered.
All right, now, if you manage to steer the conversation back to your original question, you run into step 2, the layering of nuance. This is where the fog gets really, really thick. Every simple fact gets buried under a mountain of exceptions, qualifiers, and emotional context. That simple yes or no question becomes a complex tapestry of things like, well, it depends on how you define deadline, or we have to consider the emotional state of the team when we discuss this. Nothing is allowed to be straightforward. Every fact is treated like an opinion, and every opinion is treated as this profound, complex truth that requires endless exploration. And all of this leads to the final crucial step, the exhaustion concession. See, the speaker is watching you. They're waiting for the signs. Your eyes glazing over, a deep sigh, your body language just screaming that you are mentally overloaded and you just want this to be over. Then, and only then, do they offer you an exit ramp. They'll say something that sounds reasonable, like, look, I know this is complicated. Let's just agree that it's being handled. And in your state of total cognitive exhaustion, you agree, you concede. Not because you believe them or you're satisfied with the answer, but because agreeing is the fastest path to mental peace.
This pattern is so profoundly disorienting that, as research in this area shows, its targets often experience a kind of cognitive amnesia. After going through that pivot and all that layering of nuance, the listener is so far from their original point that they literally forget what they were asking about in the first place. They remember feeling upset or needing an answer, but the specific reason has been completely dissolved in the fog. The tactic hasn't just avoided the question, it has literally erased it from your working memory.
So we've seen the how, and now let's really dig into the why. Why is this pattern so devastatingly effective? To truly get that, we need to dive into the psychology of exhaustion and look at both the motivation of the speaker and the vulnerability of the listener. At its heart, this is a fundamental conflict of intent. On one side, the speaker's goal is something we can call accountability immunity. Their core belief, whether it's conscious or not, is this: if I can make everything seem infinitely complex, if nothing is simple, then I can never truly be proven wrong. It's a shield of words. On the other side, the listener's vulnerability is often a really positive instinct, the need for attunement. We're taught that being a good person means being a good listener, being empathetic, hearing people out. This tactic weaponizes our own empathy against us, making us feel that we have to prioritize their endless need to explain over our own fundamental need for clarity.
And this goes beyond just good intentions. It's grounded in our cognitive biology. We all have a biological limit to our higher-level thinking, a concept known as decision fatigue. Every choice you make, every piece of complex information you process, it depletes this finite daily resource. Conversational fog is a targeted attack on that resource. It forces you to process an unnatural amount of low-value, high-complexity information, deliberately running down your mental battery until you're too tired to make a clear judgment.
So what happens when that mental battery gets low? Well, your brain has a built-in survival mechanism. When it's under stress or cognitively overloaded, it defaults to System 1 thinking. It seeks the path of least resistance. It seeks what's known as cognitive ease. It's going to look for the simplest, easiest solution to end the mental stress. And this is the exact vulnerability that the exhaustion concession exploits. The speaker offers a simple way out. Let's just agree on this. And your exhausted brain gratefully accepts, not because it's true, but because it's easy.
Okay, we've analyzed the problem, and I know it can feel a bit bleak, but the goal here is to empower you. The goal is to move from being flooded to having sovereignty over your own analysis. So let's walk the path to clarity, focusing on simple, internal tools for self-defense. This isn't about winning an argument, it's about protecting your own mind.
Before we get to specific protocols, I want you to start with this powerful framing question you can ask yourself internally during a conversation. Is what I'm hearing right now genuine context that's actually clarifying the situation, or is it a shroud designed to obscure the simple truth? Just asking yourself this one question shifts you from being a passive recipient back into an active analyst. It's your first line of defense.
Now let's get specific. Here are 2 clear, actionable protocols for your own internal use. They don't require any argument or confrontation. They are simply tools for maintaining your own awareness and preserving your mental energy. First, we have the summary audit, and second, the anchor point protocol.
Okay, the summary audit is like running a diagnostic on the conversation in real time. You just periodically check in and ask yourself 3 simple questions. 1, is the signal-to-noise ratio dropping? Am I getting more useless information, noise, than useful information, signal? 2, is this explanation making things clearer or more confusing? That's a gut check. True context clarifies, obfuscation confuses. And 3, am I moving closer to an answer to my original question, or am I getting further away from it? This audit helps you consciously label what's happening, and that drains its power.
The second tool is the anchor point protocol. This is your tool to gently and effectively interrupt that divergent pivot. And it is incredibly simple, but so powerful. After they've gone on a long tangent, you don't engage with the tangent. You don't argue about it. You just return to your anchor. You repeat your original question verbatim. I understand what you're saying about the company's history, but my question was, did you meet the deadline? It's not aggressive. It's just a calm, firm, and persistent recentering of the conversation back to the point.
This all requires a bit of a mindset shift. It's really about giving yourself permission to value your own clarity. You can literally say this to yourself: I am allowed to want a simple answer to a simple question. The desire for clarity is not a sign of intellectual weakness or impatience. It's a sign of intellectual integrity and respect for your own time and energy. It is your right.
All right, let's bring this all together for our final takeaway. Understanding conversational fog isn't just some interesting psychological exercise. It's about recognizing that in a world that is drowning in noise, the demand for simplicity is not a weakness. It is a profound act of power and self-preservation.
Let this one sink in for a second. A simple lie can be pretty easily disproven. But a lie that's wrapped in thousands of words of nuance and context and pseudo-intellectualism is much, much harder to fight. It's designed to exhaust you before you can even find it. It uses your own intelligence and your desire to be fair against you. Just remember this: complexity is very often the burial ground of the truth.
So the goal isn't necessarily to win every argument or force someone to be direct. The ultimate goal is to protect your own cognitive autonomy. Your mind is your private territory, and you get to decide who and what fills it. The most important defense you have is awareness. Simply knowing that this pattern exists gives you the power to see it for what it is, not a reflection of your inadequacy, but a tactic designed to confuse you.
Ultimately, it all comes down to this. You don't have to follow someone else into their maze of words. You have the power to stay on solid ground, to hold on to your own clarity. So when you feel that fog rolling in, remember that you have a choice. Cut through the fog and demand the point.